All right, our very last lesson of Unit 4, interpreting linear equations, or linear relationships, sorry. If it has a linear relationship, we use the equation y equals mx plus b. You can see the word line in linear, and this is the equation of the line, where m equals slope, and your slope formula is the change of y over the change of x. All right, and then your b, that is your y-intercept. We introduced that concept last week, or this week, I don't know, a couple units, sections ago, we introduced the y-intercept. And that is when x equals 0, what does y equal? That is where your, I missed an entire syllable, y-intercept. Hey, there we go. That is where your line crosses your y-axis. Now remember your y-axis line. It will shift depending on the graph, but it's a very dark line going up and down, and the dots, the intercept, is right on that line. All right, let's check out the front. These are all real-world examples because they all have globes. So example 1, we're going to interpret linear equations. So it says Patrick is using the formula F equals 9/5 C plus 32 to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. So in this case, F is Fahrenheit, C is Celsius. Okay. To make sense of a recommended water temperature given in Celsius for his new fish tank, find and interpret the rate of change. All right, the rate of change. And this is just a term for m, or slope. And then we have initial value. All right, initial value, that's just your starting value, or starting at time 0. So this is b. All right. So we got our m's and our b's. Now this equation looks a little different, but it is still actually in the y equals mx plus b format. There we go. Now we are in actual focus. Sorry about that. So our equation that we were given is F equals 9/5 C plus 32. All right. So this is actually in linear format. It just has f and c instead of y and x. So let's rewrite this with a y and x. So in the format we're used to, it would be y equals 9/5 x plus 32. All right, so all we have done is we have got our y is representing the F, which is Fahrenheit, and our X is representing C, which is Celsius. So when usually our slope is the change of Y over the change of X, but in our case, in our original Fahrenheit and Celsius equation, is the change of Fahrenheit over the change of Celsius. This is going to come in handy when we go to interpret our slope, all right? And remember that b is when x equals 0, what does y equal? All right? So let's see what we got. Find and interpret the rate of change. Remember your rate of change is m, and your m is always attached to the x, all right? So in our case, x is 9/5, so in the original formula, it is attached to c. And so m equals 9/5. And so it wants us to interpret it. All right, well, m is typically the change of y over the change of x. But in our original equation, we're talking about the change in Fahrenheit over the change of Celsius. So to interpret this 9/5 in our original equation, we have is, well, Fahrenheit goes up 9 degrees as the bottom Celsius goes up 5 degrees. And I can say they go up because they are both positive. So when you're positive, you go up. All right? So all I did was I used my letters from my original equations, an up arrow, the m itself, and the only thing I've actually added is the word as, and a little degree symbol next to 9 and 5. All right? So that one, just had to think about it a little and make our conversion so we could visually see it. So now let's find and interpret our initial value. Well, that always comes after x, or in our original formula, c. So it is 32. All right, initial value, that is your b. b equals 32. All right, and remember that b is when x equals 0. What does y equal? All right, and we always talk about y first. In our case, y is Fahrenheit. So Fahrenheit equals 32 when Celsius, because that's what our x is, Celsius equals 0. You can put your little degree symbols in there if you like. So when Celsius is 0, Fahrenheit is 32. These are the freezing points in both Fahrenheit and Celsius. All right. We don't typically use Celsius in America, but most of the rest of the world and the scientific community do. So that's actually a helpful conversion. Our next real-world example, now we're going to do it with, we're going to interpret linear relationships with a graph, all right? Now, when you have a graph, you have to be mindful. Now, this graph actually has what I call pretty points. They are points where your x's and your y's cross perfectly. So they didn't have to actually give us addresses for any of these points because they are pretty points. But sometimes you're given graphs and you're given actual addresses for the points because they aren't pretty points. They are in locations that aren't exactly on the x and the y crossings. Okay, so just be mindful of that, particularly on your assignment that goes with this, just saying. All right. So here is a very, very real-world example. So a shoe store offers free points when you sign up for their rewards card. Then, for each pair of shoes purchased, you can earn an additional number of points. Very common. The graph shows the total points earned for several pairs of shoes. So this is a graph of shoes. Up the y-axis is points earned, and across your x is pairs of shoes purchased. Right? And it's positive because each pair of shoes that you buy, your number of points goes up. It wants us to find and interpret the rate of change, remember that's your m, and your initial value, which is your b. Okay? Part A, we're going to find and interpret the rate of change. That's my m. All right, we're going to choose any 2 points from the graph. I'm going to advise you to pick 2 points next to each other. It does not matter which 2 points you choose, just try to pick them next to each other because it involves less math. Just saying, try to make your life easier. I'm going to pick that point and this point here. You could pick 2 other points. I just picked those. Why? Just because. All right. So my m is, remember, rise over run. Rise over run. All right. So we're going to rise up, so we know it's positive, and that is going from 90 points up to 120 points. So what you think is, well, what do I add to 90 to get to 120? And that would be 30 points. Okay. So 90 plus 30 is 120. That's how far we rose up based on the worth of your y-axis. And then we run. Okay. You rise first, or you fall. If you fall, it's negative. And then you always run. Run last. All right. So we went from 4 pairs of shoes up to 6. Well, what do you add to 4 to get to 6? You add 2. So 30 divided by 2 equals, you can do 15 over 1 or 15. Now I like to put in the 15 over 1 simply because when you interpret, you must talk about the change of y and the change of x, even though it's only 1. And here's how we do that. We're going to use the labels that we are given to talk about this 15. Okay, we always talk about the y first. Those are points earned, so that's what this 15 is. It is 15 points earned should add a S in there, sorry. Points earned. All right. 1. What are we talking about? Pairs of shoes. All right. Per pair. Make it the most simple as possible. All right. You could have said it a couple ways. 15 points earned over one, for one pair of shoes. That would be grammatically correct. You could do that too. I'm not really, as long as you have the 15 and the 1 and you use some version of, the terms you are given and label it properly so we know you understand what you're talking about. That's all that matters. Remember, I'm not your English teacher. I really don't care about proper grammar. All right, next up, let's find and interpret our initial value. Remember, that's your B. Okay, so we're going to find and interpret our B. Okay, the B, that's the initial value, is called your y-intercept. Okay, and determine where the line intersects the y-axis. This is your y-axis. Here it is, the dark line. Okay, and your line here intersects right here. And that is your B, or your y-intercept. The line touches or crosses the y-axis line at that point. So that means your y-intercept, B equals 30. Okay? So when x equals 0, because that is the definition of your y-intercept, or B, y equals 30. So the initial number of points you earn is 30. All right, so you sign up, you get 30 points, and then each additional shoe purchase, you get 15 points. This is very, very common out in the shopping world. All right, so there was no huge math involved in the front. We are going to learn some new math to end this unit on the back. Don't worry. It's a combination of what we've already learned with slope plus some of the equation skills we've learned in Unit 3. So it always comes back. All of your skills always come back. All right, let's check out example 3. All right, so we're going to interpret the linear relationship. So remember, that's the y equals mx plus b. That's your equation of the line. The word line is in linear. Okay. Using a table. We've used tables before. If they aren't labeled, remember it's always in an XY format. X always comes first. And in this one, X is number of months, Y is number saved. All right, let's see what this table is representing. So the table shows how much money Ava has saved. Go Ava. So assume the relationship between the two quantities is linear. Okay. It'll generally tell you that. That means they're looking for the equation of the line, y equals mx plus b. That is our key equation when we're talking about linear equations, particularly in the 8th grade. All right, find and interpret the rate of change. That's your m. Your initial value, that's your b. So we're going to start out, we're going to find and interpret the rate of change, which is your m. Now we've done that before from a table. We know we have to choose 2 points to determine the rate of change. You can pick any 2 points. Just try to make sure those points are right next to each other on the table to make your life easier, because then you don't have to simplify, or the chances of you having to simplify are greatly reduced. And I want to try to make your life easier. All right, you can pick any 2 you want. I'm going to pick the middle 2. Why? Just because. No particular reason. So I'm going to do 0.1. All right, I'm going to do 0.2 in another color just so we can see it move. 0.2, okay. All right, now we have to find our rate of change, and in case anyone forgot, it's on the front. It's in prior notes, but your slope formula, is your change of y over your change of x. All right, and all points are given in an xy format. Okay, so point 1. Point 1, all right, is 430. Okay, so that's my x of my first point and my y of my first point. Then point 2 is 550. All right, that is the x of my second point and the y of my second point. Now remember, I always like to draw the background of the math when I'm doing slopes. So m equals a fraction line and then minus on top, minus on bottom. Remember, those minuses have nothing to do with a negative you might see attached to a number in a chart or a table. And we also always start off with our second point. We lead off with our y2. So our y2 is 150. It's the second point's x of 5 stays attached below it. And then my first point always trails behind. The y of my first point is 130. And the x of my first point is 4. Now we're going to math straight across. A fraction line. 150 minus 120, 130, sorry. That is 20. And 5 minus 4 is 1. So we have 20 over 1, or m equals 20. I do like this one, so we can have it for when we interpret. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the y, which is money saved. All right, so that is $20 saved per one month. All right, so $20 saved per month. Okay. All right. So we found it, we interpreted it. All right. Now let's find and interpret our initial value. Now we've had tables on prior assignments that had x equals 0 and it gave us our y. But this one doesn't do it. We're actually going to have to find it. All right, but we have the pieces. So our first piece was m. All right. And m equals 20. All right. Now, you just have to pick a point. You get to pick one of these 4 points. And what I did with one class was I picked a totally different point than what I used to find m. Could you use one of your points you used to find m? Yes, you can, because I did that in like 4 of my classes. It does not matter which of the points you pick. The math is going to math the same. All right, so I'm going to pick my first point. Why? Just because. Okay, so in this one, this is my x, this is my y. All right, so we have x equals 3, and I'll do y here. Y equals 110, just so you can see the numbers and move when where they go in the equation. We have our m, we have our x, we have our y. Remember your equation, y equals mx plus b. We have that y, we have an m, we have an x. We're going to find our b. All right, so let's fill in what we have. We have our y, which is 110. All right, and that equals mx. They are right next to each other. They are always attached. And when they are attached, and that indicates multiplication. So we are going to have m, which is 20. And that is multiplied by your x, which is 3. We can indicate multiplication by putting our 3 inside parentheses. And the last part is plus b. We don't know what b is, so we are going to find it. Plus b. All right, let's do our equation math. This is a simple 2-step equation. All right, we are going to multiply or distribute 20 times 3. All right, so 110 equals 20 times 3 is 60 plus b. Now we must isolate b. So to isolate b, we're going to mathematically move what is on the same side, which is a positive 60, and the opposite of that is a negative 60. What you do to one side, we're going to do to the other. Positive 60, negative 60, cancel each other out. We are left with b on this side. B equals 110 minus 60 is 50. B equals 50. We found it. Now let's interpret it. This is our initial value, all right? So when x equals 0, y equals 50. So we had, or she had, Ava had $15 when she started savings. So initial value, we're talking about money, is $50. Okay? Initial value, that's what you started with. All right, let's do our very last example, all right, of Unit 4. Another real-world example. All right, so we are going to interpret linear relationships using written descriptions. All right, let's go. So we got Joan. She plans to add 12 photos to her photo album each week. Okay, so 12 per week. After 8 weeks, there are 120 photos in the album. All right, so that's where we ended. We ended after 8 weeks with 120. Assume the relationship is linear. Okay, there's the little line, so it wants to use y equals mx plus b. Okay, see what we're getting. Find and interpret the rate of change and the initial value. So we're going to find our m, we're going to find our b. Cool. All right, now here's what it says. It says where x represents the number of weeks. All right, so x is the number of weeks, and we know m is always attached to our weeks. So let's see what is a number. That is a number of something, and it's attached to weeks. It's reliant on weeks, but it doesn't describe weeks. So here's what I mean. So 12 photos to her photo album each week. All right, so 12 is the number of photos. Well, how many photos? Well, it depends, because it's 12 per week or each week. All right, that's my m right there. Now it tells us x represents the number of weeks. All right, after 8 weeks. That is a direct x equals weeks. How many weeks? 8 weeks. X equals 8. All right. That tells us one more thing. Y represents the total number of photos in the album. There are 120 photos in the album. That is a definite, it relies on nothing. So y equals 120. M equals 12. You have your y, your m, your x. We can solve for b. All right. Now here's the thing. We have to do it all from scratch. And the one thing I didn't tell you, in case you don't have, because you are not going to have part A, part B, you have to know, hey, what do I do to find B? All right, so here's what we did, and here is what you might want to notate to find B, all right, because I know sometimes when you take tests, your mind goes blank. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to find your slope, okay? We know how to do that. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to pick 1 point, okay? You're going to pick 1 point, and you're going to use it, all right? That's what we did up here, all right? Or in this case, it gave you X, it gave you Y. Sometimes, though, it's going to give you more than 1 point, so you just got to pick one, all right? So there's your little notate to remember for when you take that test on Tuesday and your mind might go blank. Oh my goodness, how do I find B? That's exactly how you find B. All right, so let's go back to this one. So find and interpret the rate of change. It says, since Joan adds 12 photos to her album each week, the rate of change is, well, 12. The rate of change is M, and M equals 12. That required no math, but part B, we're going to have to do some math. Because we want to find and interpret the initial value, that is B, and it says substitute the values for M, X, and Y from the problem. So let's set up what we have. Y equals 120, and that equals, what is my M? That's 12. That's multiplied by X, which is 8. And we're going to put that in parentheses to indicate multiplication. And then finally, plus B. Okay? So we have Y equals MX plus B. Now let's isolate our B. 12 times 8. Okay. So 120 equals 96 plus B. Now we're going to isolate B. On the same side is a positive 96. The opposite of positive 96 is minus 96. So we can mathematically move it. And what we do to one side, we must do to the other. Positive 96 and negative 96, those cancel. And we're left with just B on the right. And 120 minus 96 is 24. All right, now remember what B is. That is when X is 0. What is Y? And Y is 24. Okay. So this is at point 0, 24. This is your initial value. And what is Y? Y talks about photos in an album. Okay. So your initial value equals 24 photos. So she started with 24 photos. All right, that's it. So you have until January 30th to get all your late work done for Unit 4. We have a test that day. Make sure you have all of your notes. We'll do a study guide on Monday.